Thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. It's 10 minutes before the top of the hour. Weather Center coming up will highlight the tropics and a look at severe weather. And we're going to do that now as well, giving you a little more in-depth view of what's happening across the tropics. And we'll start there first, taking you on into the Gulf of Mexico, where we still have our tropical disturbance. Now, we continue to watch this because, of course, it's close proximity to the U.S. At this point, it is not a tropical depression. The hurricane hunters flew out across this region, and most likely will be doing the same thing as we head on into the morning hours. But generally, not a lot of organization here, and there is actually an area of upper-level low pressure just off to the west that's tending to inhibit the development of this particular cluster of showers and thunderstorms. So there is some convection. It doesn't seem to be too terribly organized. In fact, all this is to the east of the area of low pressure itself. So at this point in time, we're not seeing a lot of organization, but again, it's a concern because it's so close to the U.S. and also because this area is very favorable for development early in the hurricane season. Typically, this is where we look for development, heading into the Western Caribbean and on into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, as we take a closer inspection, you can see that cluster of clouds. There is an area of upper-level high pressure in the vicinity of our tropical disturbance. But look at this, just off to the west, there is that area of upper-level low pressure, and that is the one, again, that has kind of been inhibiting development of this particular disturbance. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it. It's certainly worth keeping an eye on, and it could mean some significant rain somewhere along the western Gulf Coast. We'll continue to watch that as well. We'll show you an expanded view here, and you can see some of the moisture on the water vapor loop. You can also see Hurricane Blas, which continues to weaken. We'll get into that in just a moment as we head into the eastern Pacific. But again, you can see the plume of moisture. There's actually some of this moisture from Blas kind of getting fed into this as it crosses over Mexico and Central America. Now, if this were to be upgraded and turn into a depression or actually into a tropical storm, if it were to become a tropical storm down the road, it would be called Alex. But again, that is certainly not a certainty whether or not this thing is even going to develop into anything. But it's worth showing you some of the 1998 hurricane season names here just so you can get familiar with them as we go through the hurricane season. We are just at the beginning, and the thing that we want to really impress upon you is the fact that it's important to be prepared. It's always important to be prepared. If you live anywhere along the coast, you're vulnerable to tropical activity, and the best line of defense is just be ready for it. So this is the time, as things are just starting to get going in the tropical season, to kind of get your family disaster supply kit ready. And we've kind of listed just a few of the important things. I'm sure you can think of other things that would be necessities for your family to have should you have to evacuate. Just some common sense things to think about, or even if you decided to stay at home, what you might need to weather the storm. So keep that in mind. All right. While it's fairly quiet out there in the Atlantic Basin, with the exception of our disturbance in the Gulf of Mexico, we have had some action here in the eastern Pacific. This is Hurricane Blas. We're already on the B storm, centered at 17.1 north and 110.1 west as of 8 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. It's about 390 miles south of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Sustained winds of 115 miles per hour, so still holding on to Category 3 status, but it is weakening as it moves to the west-northwest. It's going to continue that movement, so it'll be moving away from land into cooler waters, and the weakening trend should continue. Now, notice that the eye, the center of circulation here, is no longer symmetric with the CDO, the central dense overcast. In other words, there's probably a little bit of shearing going on here. And most likely, we're finding as this moves over into cooler water, it's losing at least some of its punch. And again, that trend is expected to continue, so we'll keep an eye out for that. It's going to bring some high surf up around Cabo San Lucas. If you've got the boat port in the port there, in the harbor, you might want to kind of keep an eye on things, and maybe some dangerous riptides for swimmers into the coastal areas of Mexico. Taking you back into the Atlantic Basin now, there's Puerto Rico into the western, or I should say the eastern Caribbean. There are some areas where there's some tropical waves moving off